Hi, welcome to My Favorite Mistake. I'm Mark Graven. Our guest today is Scott Ballard. He is a coach, he's a speaker, he's an author. His company is called Confidence Coach LLC, and Scott has been doing that after a career as an insurance broker, and he's based in Portland, Oregon. So, Scott, thank you for joining us. How are you today?
We're good. We've got sunshine and excited to be on the call with you today.
Well, good. Well, I'm excited to hear what you'll have to share, and we'll have a good conversation based off of that. Scott, looking back and thinking about your career and your work and your life, what is your biggest, I almost made a mistake. What is your favorite mistake? My gosh, that's the name of the show. A lot of times people want to... I'm going to leave that in there because, I demonstrate almost every episode, not with that mistake, but with something. We're all human. So with that, Scott, what is your favorite mistake?
That seems appropriate for the show. So actually don't edit that out.
It's not, it's not intentional. I don't have to make it intentional.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So to answer your question, I think my favorite mistake is this idea that being dyslexic is shameful, is a disability. It's a problem. It's an obstacle. This started for me in first grade when the teacher sat me in the corner and said, "You're stupid, you're a dunce, and you'll never be anything."
Gosh.
And, I made the mistake in that to believe a person of authority that really didn't have my best interest at mind, my future, especially a young child. You're so vulnerable.
Right.
So I started to put that on, Mark, like a coat, like every day. School was shameful for me. It was a problem, was not a healthy place for me to be, to the point of considering suicide at 7, 8 years of age. So yeah, that's where my mistake really began to fester at such a young age. A lot of people, it's not till their adult years, but it really got put on me at that point. And so that's where it started. And this is where it's led me to why it's now my favorite mistake, was to believe a lie about dyslexia, about my identity, about who I am, what the value is that I bring to the world, both business and personal. And now I get to talk about it. I get to be a champion about it, and I get to coach people around that. And that's huge.
So how did you come then to realize that it was a mistake to frame dyslexia as being shameful or equating it with stupidity?
Yeah, so it's ironic. So I'm in this grade school, and so I did the first grade twice. So if you weren't already discouraged, if you didn't already feel terrible, all my friends went to second grade. And they said, you didn't really get it. They didn't know what it was back then. You're just stupid. We're going to have you do this again. Oh, it was 10 times worse, because then you have all your buddies on the playground. It was terrible. But the ironic thing was, when I got to sixth grade, which I got there, it's a miracle, but I got to sixth grade, I had a new teacher. He was a first year teacher. His name was Mr. Bacall. And we walked in the first day of class, and he said, "I want you to take all the desk out of the classroom and sit on the floor." And I'm already starting to go into panic mode because I'm back at school after summer break. And I'm like, okay, now we've got somebody. I'm just starting to be able to do the basic school thing just to survive through it. He gets rid of all the desk, and he says, "We're going to take the classroom and education, and we're going to turn it all into a business." So if you wanted a ball to play foursquare or basketball at recess or football, somebody owned that and rented you the ball for that. Or if you wanted a snack at lunch, or if you wanted copies for your paper or whatever. So we started the year Each one of us owned a business and then had a certain amount of money. And so the long story short, not to draw this out, but by the end of the year, I owned pretty much all the businesses and I had pretty much like almost all the money. And I had learned that I have a mind, my dyslexic mind actually has a gift that is really valuable in business, entrepreneurship, like seeing the future and seeing trends and understanding value and all of these things. So I started first grade in the worst possible scenario. In the same little school in sixth grade, I had this life-changing transformation of, oh, maybe I'm not stupid and going to be a janitor my whole life. Maybe I could be like this business person.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was a light bulb moment. Now, did school get easier, Mark? No.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's be honest. I don't learn in the way our education worked back then or it does today. It didn't get, but that's when I got this glimmer of hope. And I was like, okay, if I can just survive junior high and high school and get the heck out of this system, I'm going to do this business thing.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I played sports. I was really good at sports. So that got me, the coaches and the school just passed me on because they wanted me on the team because we were, winning and all that. But I got out and I still believed part of the lie because I got out and I tried 3 different colleges and just bombed out, like this stuff. But I married this beautiful lady and she believed in me in a way that started to replace the disbelief or the belief of my identity that I had about myself being dyslexic. And so I went back to the sixth grade experience and I said, I'm going to start a business. Now, I had no education, I had no money, I had no background, I had no business going into business or anything like that. But I did it and I kept trying. And we failed in our 20s, we failed like 10, 11 different businesses, lost all of our money, failed, whatever. And she would always say to me, she'd go, it's okay. What did we learn and what can we do better next time? And we're going to make it. You're going to figure this out. And so as that happened, we learned, and I learned as a dyslexic, this is one of the gifts that makes dyslexic so special, is I learned how to fail really fast. And then take the lesson, right? Take the lesson, Mark, and then go, okay, how do I apply that to the next situation? And I wasn't daunted by failure because I had so many F's and failed tests in my growing up years that seeing an F on a paper was like, okay, so that didn't work. So the next time I'll try something different. I'm not, so you build up the strength, this resilience,
right?
This, because being an entrepreneur, business owner is like, you've got to move quickly from failure to learning to the next breakthrough, this process. And sometimes you have to do it, as you well know, 3 or 4 or 5 times a day. And then you have to take your team and you've got to show them and help them and coach them. How do you develop that resiliency? I mean, this last year of COVID has been an amazing year for me to see people get stopped, get stuck, get whatever. And then do they know how to unstick themselves? Do they know how to move forward tomorrow? Well, here's the gift. I had been experiencing that since I was 6 years old. So I'm like, yeah, here's how we get this. What do we learn? And then where are we going now? And then this is who I am. And I don't get stuck if it doesn't work. I let it go. It's like my first grade teacher, Mrs. Matthews. I let her go. Even the second time, I let her go. And I went on. I was like, okay, well, I got to do this because, the law and my parents say you got to go to school. Okay. But that doesn't dictate my future, my best future. That doesn't dictate the result for my life and for the people I love and the customers I serve. It doesn't do that.
Yeah.
And I don't give it that power.
Yeah. But it's great that you've learned that. And I mean, you say, you talk about, being resilient about failure and let's learn from it. Let's move on. That's what you are. That's what this podcast is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why when we talked the first time, I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is, I mean, here's an interesting fact, Mark, that you should know. 1 in 5 people listening to this right now have some form of dyslexia in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
we are, and I'm like the pioneer of this. We're the last people to come out of the closet. There's still no rights. There's still no awareness. There's still no value attached to
Mm-hmm.
being dyslexic. And yet there is so much value. And what COVID and what it's going on right now has brought to light is, oh my goodness, this actually is the lesson everybody in the world needs to learn. Take this problem, take the setback, take this pivot, and then turn it into something perfect and beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
great.
that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
So I want to, we'll come back and talk about some of the lessons from the business failures, but I want to explore a little bit, with dyslexia and learn a little bit more about this. Was there a certain point, I don't know the history of when this became better understood or when it even had that label dyslexia? Like, do you remember was there a certain point where that diagnosis was made and you had a way of describing what you may have been struggling with in terms of reading or learning?
Yeah, I would say probably my early 20s. I went to a doctor in New York that had a daughter that was dyslexic that actually had done considerable research trying to figure out what this is, and that really helped me understand what was going on with it. And there's 19 different forms or expressions of dyslexia.
Okay.
So, for example, there's dysgraphia, which is the writing. So if you looked at my writing, you would go, if you look at my board, you'd go, what is that, Chinese? What is that? Well, that's dysgraphia in my own form, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can only imagine as a kid, or better yet, running a company like I did, and I am giving written instructions to somebody.
Right.
Hello, it's not happening.
Sure.
No, it's not happening. So what I have found through the years is, what are the tools? What are the things that allow my genius to come out, but not get trapped in an old system? So I have Otter. So Otter is a recording transcription on AI thing, and I use it. I send messages and I write more content than pretty much everybody I know, because now I found a way to bypass the obstacle, which is the written hand, which, I'm never going to be a great writer. You're never going to read a handwritten note from me and go, oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Scott. That's beautiful. You're going to be like, is this Chinese or what is this?
Yeah.
And so
the
embarrassment comes this way, Mark. The embarrassment is, people still today make comments of, oh, that's just like a dyslexic would do. I went right instead of left. I must be dyslexic. I mean, the shame that our society has tolerated, the world around this, is unlike anything. I mean, everybody now is respected, right? I mean, especially in the last year or two. I mean, all this beautiful stuff has happened.
Right.
And 1 in 5 people, over 1 billion people on the planet, have this, and they're still proverbially in the closet. I refuse to tolerate that anymore.
Good.
Well, I am on this show to tell you that we're here, we're proud, and we're making a difference in the world. And actually, if you look around, the value creators, the impactors, the world changers, a large portion, Mark, not 1%, 20, 30, 40% of those people are dyslexic in some form.
Right. There's a phrase, is it neurodiversity, that's been used in more recent years for people who are, maybe to describe, autistic spectrum, or, ways different people's brains function. Different doesn't mean bad or worse. And I think people have come to embrace that some people have strengths on top of challenges.
I tell Mark all the time, that there is a dark side to dyslexia, because there is, absolutely. And then there is a side that is genius.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to decide which side we're going to feed. And that took me a long time. I'm not saying it doesn't. The beauty of that is, now that I've had 61 years of working through this, is I can sit down with a dyslexic, or I can sit down with anybody that's struggling with their genius of who they are, their truth identity. And in an hour, I can reprogram that for them by getting rid of the lies and exchanging them for the truth. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we want to get about dyslexia. The truth is, in certain areas, I'm an absolute genius. In certain, like this verbal communication, me speaking, me writing, whatever, I'm a genius at this, because I could never do the reports in school like you could.
Mm-hmm.
The handwritten reports, it was an F.
Sure.
But if she put me in front of the class and said, talk about the basketball game Friday night and the strategy and how you're going to win and whatever, the whole class is standing up cheering.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people who can't do that. They're terrified to try. And
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, we're on a mission about this, Mark. I mean, like, this is, thank you for having the guts. I mean, a lot of people just say, well, it doesn't really matter, or those people aren't of value, or we're so unseen in society. I don't have a dyslexic pen or a hat or a flag.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Right. What I have is a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And what my intention is for the rest of my days, my intention is to say, here we are.
Mm-hmm.
And in our own way, we're amazing. And we fit into contributing to making this world better every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you mentioned, comments that people will make in meetings. I admitted to you when we did a pre-call, I'll admit this publicly in the podcast, so I'm not proud of it. A mistake I have made is that flippant remark in a meeting. Somebody transposes a couple numbers on the whiteboard, and it's easy to flippantly say something about a dyslexic moment, and without thinking about somebody in the room who has a form of dyslexia, how that would feel. And I think part of the evolution that people are trying to make is to be better about putting ourselves in someone else's shoes, whatever dimension of difference that might be. So, we try to learn, we get better. And if people don't realize a comment like that is a mistake, one of the themes of this podcast is learning from mistakes. If we don't know something is a mistake,
right,
we can't reflect on it, we can't learn. Are there times where you've had to sort of say, hey, whoa, wait a minute, if somebody has made a comment, not knowing, when you talk about being closeted about dyslexia, I'm sure you know about this because you've experienced it.
Right. I remember a meeting. I was sitting in my last company. I was sitting in a meeting with an accountant and an attorney. Okay, so you're talking about two people that their whole way of thinking, their whole way of doing is based off traditional education, right? Yep. Which is great. I mean, we need those people. We hired them. We paid them a lot of money to do what they do. And then having to really say to them or explain to them that that's not the only thing. And in fact, the reason we're one of the top 3 companies in the country is because we actually now embrace the right side of the brain, which is my superpower, coupled with the left side, which is your superpower. Then this is why we're at the top. So when you start to criticize the other side or lessen the value or not appreciate the contribution, you got a problem. And so this was in front of all the leaders in the organization. And I called these 2 gentlemen out and I said, that's not acceptable here. Now, this was 18 years ago, Mark. So like the room went dead silence. Now I'm the owner. So it's like, if you don't like it, there's the door.
It was less risky to speak up.
But. Right. So I had that backup. I had that power, so to speak. It sounds bad to say, but I had the authority to speak into that. Now, what's interesting about that, the attorney came back to me later in time, and we had a really valuable conversation around that. The accountant never did and never got over his own ego or his own only way of contributing, and we moved on to somebody else.
Yeah.
And you know, that was a lesson for me on both sides. But I also knew that if I didn't say anything in my position, how is the guy down the street or the gal or the kid at the school or the university or whomever going to start to say, hey, you know what? There's something else here.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what it is.
Yeah. So, you know, thinking back to when you describe it being a mistake to not be open about your dyslexia, do you remember, was there a moment or was it more gradual where you just say, you know what, this is who I am. I'm going to be proud of it and let people know.
Yeah. You know, I say this and I'm not proud of it. It took a long time, Mark, like,
Okay.
you know, 35, 40 years of age. We had at that point taken a company from our kitchen table and $100 and no experience in the industry to the top 3 in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I had not told a soul in my company. I had all these people working for me with MBAs and college degrees and all this, that I was dyslexic.
Mm-hmm.
Or that part of the reason why we were having so much success is I was actually be able to see the trends and to do things that they couldn't do. Not proud of that, but started to then kind of come out of that whole thing and talk about it to people. And where I found the best conversation in the beginning was our product that we sold was to small business and entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. And what I found was I could identify another dyslexic with before they would never tell me, but I'd have somebody sign a contract and fill out a form, and I would sense the hesitation, or I'd see them struggling with it, or they'd give it to their attorney or accountant or whatever. And I'd be like, and then afterwards, not in front of anybody else, I would always say, hey, Mark, are you dyslexic? Because I am. Yeah. And the person would, you know, also there'd be the fear, and then there'd be, oh, you are too. And then there was this bond and conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, that really helped me. And in the business world, there's so many of us that have done so well because we can't, you know, to be a doctor for a dyslexic, the educational side of it. I mean, it happens, but it's really hard. It's not the way to go. So many of us end up in this creative entrepreneurial space. So I kind of found my tribe weirdly, like by selling and serving them, and then having these kind of meetups, these conversations, and I think that helped, and you know, and it was over time, and now, I don't know, I coach dyslexic leaders and people, and I mean, it's so normal to me now, but I mean, it was a long journey. I'm 61. Yeah. You know, I don't wish this on the 6-year-old right now that's trying to do online school as a dyslexic.
Well, one thing I was going to ask about school, I'd hope that teachers have become far more understanding about recognizing and not shaming a child the way you were, right? I hope. Do you know how this is going?
Well, we have some really good news, and then we got some news that is shocking. Okay, so let's start with the shocking news. So I live in a suburb of Portland, and the school district next to where I live, until last year, did not even recognize or acknowledge that dyslexia actually existed.
Wow.
Now, this is the second or third largest school district in our state. Okay, what in the heck is going on? These are educators. These are people teaching our kids, and 1 in 5 of those kids in their classroom has some form of this. Okay, that's the bad news, that we're still, and Oregon is known as a progressive state. So we're not like somewhere where, you know, they're in denial. I mean, we're supposed to be the leaders in this. So that's the bad news. The good news is that the resources and the outside support and tools are just booming.
Mhm.
Like, it's just happening. Like my niece, which has a daughter that's dyslexic, has learned over the last 3 years how to do this thing called the brain breakthrough, which is basically helping a dyslexic manage their dyslexia and taking a lot of the anxiety, stress, and the problems and helping them with that. And it's amazing the results that have come from that.
Mhm.
So there's so much more information that's positive, that helps and can facilitate a parent, a child, a teacher, an administrator, from that standpoint, that did not exist in the 60s, Mark.
Sure.
I mean,
Well, that's
people would look at me, they hooked me up, put probes on my head as a 7-year-old to do a brain scan to see whether or not I had a brain, basically. I mean, it was crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you talked, Scott. Maybe we can talk a little bit about failing fast. I mean, that has become a buzzword in Silicon Valley, and methodologies like lean startup. Fail fast, but learn from it. My professional background, based around what we call, the lean manufacturing and related methodologies. Lessons from Toyota people that I've learned from. They talk about fail small so you can avoid big failures, because there are cycles of learning involved. And I appreciate you sharing that and making those connections. But, with Confidence Coach LLC, can you talk a little bit, as you have built, started and built and grown this business? Can you think of some examples where you failed fast and learned from it in a way that's helped you grow and survive and succeed?
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to my mind, which may sound strange, is that not everybody is my ideal coaching client. Okay. For one, if you can't be transparent and honest about your failures, I can't help you.
Mm.
Okay. So that became apparent at the beginning as I was coaching people. It was like, okay, are you coachable or not? Right. And so I had to learn that really quickly from that standpoint, because I had had so much success in my last company that people would come to me and yet they were not coachable. Right. And so you have to continue to do that. In fact, my wife, which is the owner of our company, she says to me all the time, she goes, "You're changing things all the time. You've had 5 new ideas today." And I said, "I've had 5 new ideas today because we have 5 new problems that I've identified."
That's great.
And so we get comfortable in that cycle is really important, right? And so it really starts with, what am I believing about myself and about the work or the business I'm building, right? And if I'm believing a lie, Mark, like I'm dyslexic, so therefore I'm stupid, I can never be a millionaire. Okay, there's a problem there, and there is an opportunity if I will go, okay, what is the truth really? The truth is, the evidence would say, and I could list you off 100 people, it actually might be the most important value if you're going to be successful in business in the world today. But if you've believed that lie until we reprogram and exchange it for the truth, then we're stuck.
Yeah.
So we're constantly working, and I'm constantly working and thinking, okay, is that a lie or a problem that I believe that isn't true?
It's a great question.
Right. And so then we can work. Then I can have a really great conversation. I can ask you some incredibly impactful questions to make you wrestle with that, and then make you go, okay, you've got to make a decision, Mark, right now, whether you're going to continue living into that lie and get that result, or you're going to change, you're going to exchange it for a truth that's going to get you the future you want.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I found in this, which is interesting, is this just isn't for dyslexics. What I found is guys that are MBAs, people that are attorneys, people that are CEOs of a Fortune 100 company have this same struggle. They think about it differently, they look at it differently, but I asked him a series of questions, and I said, what do you believe about your leadership in this Fortune 100 company? What do you truly believe? Just between you and me, confidentially. And then you hear these lies come out, like, I'm not worthy, I feel I'm alone, nobody understands where I'm at. If anybody understood how little I knew about running this organization of 100,000 employees, they would get rid of me tomorrow. This happens with world-changing leaders. And I'm like, okay, here we are. I am so thankful that I was made dyslexic to learn these kind of truths, to be able to sit down with a person like this and go, you and me, we both have a genius, we both have a lie and a truth, and what are we going to do with it? And what is our choice and decision today in this moment? All we have is today. Tomorrow never comes. I wrote a whole series of articles on it. Tomorrow never comes. What we have is today. And so we have to choose now. Am I choosing the lie, or am I choosing the truth? And I can't live in the middle of the exchange. I had a client the other day say, I just want to be in the middle. And I'm like, there's no such a place. There's no such a place.
The middle might seem safe, but it's not really.
No. The middle is believing the lie.
Yeah. So that's not good.
Yeah. You're neutral. So you are stuck. And when you tell this to somebody that's been, everybody in their lives tell them how great they are and they've got it all together, whatever, and you tell them this for the first time, there's anger, there's this, and then most of the time there's tears in their emotion going, oh, you understand. It's insight, it's breakthrough. And then something amazing can happen.
Yeah. Wow. Scott, one final question kind of related to your work, Confidence Coach LLC. You mentioned coaching dyslexic leaders. Is it 1 in 5 of your clients who are dyslexic because that's what occurs? Is it 2 in 5 because entrepreneurs maybe have more prevalence of dyslexia or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the answer is yes. I mean, it changes all the time, but we don't filter for that anymore, because what I realized, and this was with a huge global leader in the business world. What I realized was the guy is so smart, book smart, it's scary, like unbelievably book smart.
Yeah.
But he had, over the years, continued to believe and live into a lie to the point of he was losing it. And so we don't discriminate. We don't want to be discriminated against, Mark. And I don't want to discriminate. What I want people to do is to be the best version of themselves today, because that's going to be the best future for all of us tomorrow. And so that's what we go about working and creating on a daily basis. And we haven't worked in 13 years doing this because this does not feel like work, because this is my genius. Right. This is my gift to the world. So I get to do this. So I'm hoping this is just the beginning of a 40-year run. Yeah. And that's what I'm after,
Well, that's great. That's great. So Scott, if again, our guest has been Scott Ballard, Confidence Coach LLC. If people want to learn more about your work or connect with you or be coached by you, where can they find you online?
Yeah, www.confidencecoach.org. And you can just hit the button there, find a time, free conversation. We do that for everybody to begin with. And I'd love to talk to you. And if nothing else, encourage you. Whether you're dyslexic or you're not dyslexic, we're all humans and we're all in this together. And, we want the best for you. One of the phrases in our company is we provide unlimited encouragement to people, no matter where they're at, where they've been, or what they've done. Like, we believe, like I tell clients all the time, I believe in you. When everybody else walks out of the room, I'm going to walk in and say, I believe, Mark, that you can do what you've set your mind to do.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great to hear. And we'll just end on that really positive, uplifting reminder from you, Scott. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing, your story and what you've learned, and for kind of reemphasizing the idea, personally and with different businesses, we've got to learn from mistakes. Let's keep moving forward. So thank you Thank you for that.
Thanks, Mark.